Hey everyone, this is Patrick, and it is time for a special edition of four-part series, my favorite 40 albums of 2023. This is part one. Um, I do find it fun and sort of challenging to order music, so I am doing this in order. I'm starting from number 40, and I am ending eventually, of course, at my favorite album of the year. This part one is going to go through number 40 through 31. Okay? A little bit of sort of a summary of 2023. So I probably listened to more albums this year than any, I should say this. I've listened to more new albums this year than any year ever. I get to at least 5 new albums every week. Most weeks I get through more than five, so I probably have listened to close to 300 new albums plus demos, EPs, splits, compilations that came out in 2023. That is why I think having a top 40 sort of matters and makes sense. So I didn't listen to 40 albums and I'm ranking all 40, right? I actually have listened to over 300 new releases this year, so I'm giving you my absolute favorite top 40 albums of the year. At the midpoint of this year, I thought it was a stronger year than 2022. By the end of this year, I still feel the same. I probably liked about 80 albums this year, and like means sort of, I rated them a 7.5 or higher. My most common rating was a 7, so it's not like I'm overrating albums. Well, you know what I'm trying to say. Of course, to your taste, I'm probably overrating albums. But the average listen was probably around a 7 through 7.4, but there's a great chunk that I liked more than that. And my top 40, I would say they're all around 8 out of 10 or higher. Of course, my top 10 or so are going to be 9 out of 10 or higher. But these top 40 albums here are great albums in my opinion. So why don't we begin? So number 40 is going to be a band from... All right, so let's get to number 40. Number 40 for me is Gutslit Caral. Gutslit are a brutal death metal band from Mumbai, India. They began their career in 2007. They've had a number of lineup changes. This one saw the return of their original vocalist. There are a 4-piece on this album. You get 8 tracks, 29 minutes and 56 seconds of music. Yeah, there's a couple of sort of more brutalish albums that almost that were on the short list to make my top 40. Gutslit beat most of them out. Vocal style is sort of a mixture of low growls, sort of there's some gang vocals, there's some pig squeals, there's even this higher range that kind of reminds me of Trevor from the Black Dahlia Murder, but this is not melodic death metal, this is brutal death metal. Think of bands like Dying Fetus, Aborted, Benighted, Embrace Your Punishment. All that together gives you Gutslit Caral. So yeah, my favorite tracks are probably going to be... So side A has sort of 2 to 3 minute long songs. Side B starts with Insidious, and Insidious is like a 40-second grind, brutal grind song. And then track 6, Body Snatcher, track 7, Altar of Putridity, and track 8, Primeval, are actually the longer songs on this album. So the album basically builds up, and side B is an outstanding side. So my 4 favorite tracks are all the songs from side B. Lyrical themes are going to be serial killers, mostly serial killers, bordering on gore, but mostly just sort of what would you call it? Sort of just a digest of brutal human tragedy, evil. There's a John Wayne Gacy clip that starts off one of these songs. So yeah, if you're in the mood for this headbanging, brutal death metal, check out Gutslit and Carnal. It's a bit technical at times, but not the same way that Dying Fetus sort of blends technicality with slam. This is definitely more just brutal throughout, but there's some technicality as well and some interesting guitar work. Number 40, Gutslit with Carnal. Number 39, and this album fell a bit after I listened to it, and that probably makes sense for me because it's not typically the kind of album that I am drawn to, but I do like it a lot. So my number 39 is Malacarpan with Vertumnus Caesar. This is a band that has formed in 2014. They are from Slovakia. This album is on Invictus Records. 8 tracks, 46 minutes of music, and this is their 4th LP. Malacarpan from Slovakia play this sort of blackened heavy metal, speed metal, trad metal with some Slovakian sort of folk elements thrown together. You got Vladimir on vocals and choirs. You got Adam on guitars. The cover is by Astrid Bergdahl. And listen to all these instruments that are on this album. So you have keys, you have the tambourine, the stylophone, you have a glockenspiel, you have an accordion, you have melody, harps, bells, bongos, mellotron. So yeah, and of course the guitars, bass, vocals, drums, and all that. But so yeah, very colorful listen. I was sort of grinning a full grin the entire time when I first listened to this album. I like what they're doing here. According to the band themselves, they are influenced by Merciful Fate, King Crimson, Master's Hammer, Bathory, and I hear the last 2 Dark Throne records. Basically, if they were a bit faster, I would say that makes sense for me. So Malacarpan's Vertumnus Caesar, organic sounding production. I definitely really hear the King Crimson influence. So you get 70s prog rock, you get traditional metal, but it is a black metal album overall, I would say. Malacarpan's Vertumnus Caesar is number 39. Okay, next up is a album by Blute O Nord. Disharmonium Nahab is the name of this album, and Blute O Nord has 16 full lengths, so they are not new to the scene at all. And this is like basically a horror black metal album. This came out in Debbie Moore Morty Records. You have Vinzval on guitars and vocals, you have Ghost on bass, and you have W.D. Feld on drums, electronics, and keys. 11 tracks, 44 minutes of music. The 11 tracks do include 3 sort of segue interludes. They're called Hideous Dream Opus number 1, Hideous Dream Opus at number 2, and then Hideous Dream Opus number 3. So yeah, nightmarish black metal. There are vocals on here that basically don't really sound like vocals. They sound like this ghastly ghost whisper, just stuff of your nightmares. Yeah, so love the drum performance on this. The album did fall a bit throughout the year. It sounds a bit sterile in terms of its production. You can't tell if the drums are a drum machine or not. I asked some people that I trust, and they said they believe that this is not a drum. This is not a drum machine performance. It is drums by W.D. Feld. But yeah, Blute O Nord, they have different styles throughout their career. More primitive, second wave black metal, more industrial sounding black metal, more dissonant, less dissonant, more psychedelia, less psychedelia. This is nightmarish, dissonant black metal. Don't know who to compare them to. I can think of some death metal bands that they maybe, if you're a fan of, you might like, such as Artificial Brain, Golgothan Remains, Ulcerate. Blute O Nord is my number 38th favorite album of the year. Number 37 is Theos with Nightmare Visions. This band formed in 2020. They're from Detroit, Michigan, and this came out on February 15th. This is actually their first LP. Genre is, according to the Metal Archives, avant-garde black metal / hardcore, and that is exactly what I hear on this. This came out on Mystis Chaos Records. Immortal meets Converge. You get dissonant, choppy, lots of double bass kicks. You get some grind. It almost sounds like one long album. But yeah, Immortal meets Converge. That's what this band sounds like. I'm excited to see where they go. This also fell a little bit as I revisited all these albums that eventually wound up in my top 40. But just a really good album. I haven't heard too many people talk about this. If you like black metal, if you like hardcore, if you like Immortal meeting Converge, if you think that sounds cool to your ears, to your taste buds, give this a listen. Theophanos Nightmare Visions. This is their debut full length. Up next is going to be this band, Act of Impalement with Infernal Ordinance. This band started in 2012. This is their second full length, I believe. They're from Nashville. 9 tracks, 29 minutes of music. Cover is by Diablo Macabre. Caligari Records put this out. And you got Ethan on guitars and vocals, Jimmy on bass, and Zach on drums. This is just, I really like the pacing and the sort of track order and how the songs flow into each other. Old school death metal, probably a little bit of that sort of groovier style. Think Undeath, think Autopsy, so it's doomy, but it's mostly straightforward old school death metal with a little bit of that punky type drums coming in and here and there. But like how it flows, it's crushing, it's heavy, it's straightforward, it's to bash your skull in. Age of Impalement, Infernal Ordinance. 36th album in my top 40 of the year. 35 is a band that I have seen a lot of people talk about. It is also from Caligari Records. We're talking about Grotesqueries with Vile Crematory. Grotesqueries are from Boston. I liked their demo from last year. That's how they got on my radar. And yeah, Caligari Records. 7 tracks, 40 minutes of music. This tape edition is out of 200 copies, I believe. The CD copy is out of 300. This came out on June 30th. Fun, punky, old school death metal, Undeath, Active Impalement, like I just said, Autopsy, maybe some Undergang influence, but very, very 90s sounding death metal out of Boston. Grotesqueries, Vile Crematory is going to be my number 35th album of 2023. Okay, number 34, and this band absolutely grew on me. It kept climbing up the list as I kept going through all these albums. Ageless Summoning with Corrupting the Entempled Plane. Band started in 2016, but this is their debut album. They took their time on this, and you can hear it. They're from the United Kingdom. Came out in Dark Descent on July 21st. 10 tracks, 49 minutes, and 30 seconds of music. You get Ali on vocals. You get Greg and Rory on guitars, Derek on bass, and Hamish on drums. So, with 10 tracks coming at almost 50 minutes of music, this album sort of put itself in that position where it might have felt like it was going to be too long, but that is not the case. Every moment of this, I think, matters. I don't really think there's any fat to cut. Here's some of the influences I hear. Morbid Angel, Grave Miasma, the Danish death metal scene, Malignant Altar, Entombed, and more of the sort of heavier stuff that Gojira did on The Way of All Flesh. Number 6 even has a Converge riff, and the last song even kind of has a Converge riff. So old school death metal, some doomier moments, but not doomy. It's not death doom, but there's definitely some doom, slower tempo moments on this album. I really like how this album develops. Track 1 is just a headbanger, but track 4, Among the Worms, track that goes into the title track, Corrupting the Intempled Plane, are just a strong spot, strong moment of this album. Side B picks up where side A left off of. Heavy, dense, atmospheric death metal. They have sort of cool guitar tricks that they do throughout the songs. They kind of have these, they kind of build up atmosphere that sort of basically ends up either turning into more groovy parts or more sort of even more atmospheric parts. A lot of guitar bends, so a lot of fun guitar work on this album. Amazing artwork from Paolo Girardi, and yeah, Out on Dark Descent Records. That label is an amazing label, one of my favorite labels going right now. Debut album, again, Ageless Summoning, Corrupting the Intempled Plane. No, I want to make sure I know what number I'm at. Let's see. Yep, okay. We are at 33, and talk about an album that grew. So I thought this is probably going to be my number 40 until I kept listening to all these albums, and then I kept listening to this album, and this for me is a absolute grower, and I want to get my notes ready for this. Okay, so here we go. So who am I talking about? I am talking about Astral Tomb with Total Spiritual Death. This is their sophomore LP. This band started in 2019. They're from Denver, Colorado. This came out on July 7th. It's an independent release. And you get 7 tracks, 37 minutes, and 38 seconds of music. You get Michael Schrock on guitars, vocals, synthesizers, gong, and bass. You get Adrian Leclerc on guitars and auxiliary percussion, and you get Zach Johnson on drums. And there are, I believe, guest vocals, but I can't quite make out who they are. This says recorded live at Sonic Ranch by Pete DeBoer. So, Astral Tomb, they are in that cosmic death metal realm, being from Denver, Colorado, probably inspired by Blood Incantation. You can also think of it as progressive death metal. They had a lot of stuff that even gets close to making me feel like this album is post death metal. So track 1 is this sort of moody, cosmic, almost death. So if you know what Deftones sounds like on the Koi no Yokan album, a lot of the sort of ambient, moody, atmospheric moments that kind of build up. So this is moody, cosmic, Koi no Yokan meets maybe Blood Incantation meets Tribal Gaze. That's what you're going to get on track 1. Track 2, now I hear Worm, I hear Carcass, I keep hearing Blood Incantation. Track 3, I hear Speedy Ortiz meets Blood Incantation, Tribal Gaze, and Afterbirth. Track 4, now I hear Abraded, and I hear maybe a little bit of new metal. Don't let that scare you. So progressive death metal, that's what you get here. The 6th track is like a 12 to 13 minute track. It almost is too long. It almost just disrupts the momentum too much, because there's sort of like a interlude part of the song that has these bongo drums in it. But yeah, I just kept coming back to this. I like the tonality of it. I like the cohesion of it. It's heavy. It's progressive. It's almost post-death metal, but don't forget to check out Astral Tomb, Total Spiritual Death, an independent band that deserves your support. Okay, 2 more albums here. So 32 is an album that, ever since I heard it, I knew it was going to make my list. This came out early in the year. It came out on February 17th. This is Parasitario's debut, Everything Belongs to Death, out on FDA Records. Sorry about the glare. This band started in 2018. They're from Osaka, Japan. You got Yuto Katani on vocals and guitar. You got Yukayasu Fukaya on bass. 10 tracks, 37 minutes, and 32 seconds of music. The cover is by Debbie Badic. And as the name of the album itself alludes to, this is total early death, mid-career death worship meets asphyx. That's what this sounds like. Compared to some of these other bands that I've mentioned, you know, avant-garde, sort of more combinations of genres that might make them, ostensibly stand out more. Satario just delivers 10 death metal tracks that are catchy and memorable, and yeah, nostalgic for the makes me feel nostalgic for the 90s sound, and they're aware of it, so I like the self-awareness. Cool band out of Japan. 32 for me in 2023 is Satario's Everything Belongs to Death. I mean, the album cover art right there makes me think of Leprosy and Scream Bloody Gore. The style of the robed men. Yeah, cool killer release. Satario. Alright, so to wrap up my first video of my 4-part series of my favorite LPs of 2023 is a classic, old school, legendary band that, out of all the legendary bands of this year, let me make sure that's true, probably out of all the legendary bands that put out an album this year, this would be my favorite one. I am talking about Suffocation's Hymns from the Apocrypha, out on Nuclear Blast. This band has been around since 1988. This is their 9th LP. There's a cleaner shot of the album art. So, what is different about this Suffocation album? Most of you will know, but it's the first time that Ricky Myers is doing vocals and lyrics on this album. You still have Terrence Hobbs on guitars and songwriting. You still have Derek, who's been on bass since 2004, doing songwriting and bass as well. And then the other two are newish members. You have Eric on drums since 2016, and you have Charlie, who's on the other guitars and songwriting since 2016. So, cover art is by Giannis Nikos. This came out in November 3rd. I really like this Suffocation album. The production is modern, yet the guitars still sound like they were, plugged into actual amps. And it's great when a band like Suffocation, who has this combination of technical death metal and brutal death metal and just classic death metal, when this band has clean, clear production, I think it just serves them well. You really hear how intricate the musicianship is, the parts are, and there's some more atmosphere on this album that they hinted at introducing on their last album from 2017. This Suffocation album stands out for me. It's probably somewhere in the middle of their discography out of 9, maybe even top 4. It does bring me back to Pierced from Within. I know people are going to disagree with that. Ricky Myers does a great job of taking over vocal duties here. And yeah, this album kept growing on me. I like the singles a lot. The entire album is just really heavy, dense, has everything I like about death metal. And Terrence Hobbs is proving to be, just a living legend. One of the best death metal guitarists out there still. I would say him and Bob from Impalement, probably 2 of my favorites of the old school greats. It's awesome that they're still doing albums. They've been playing for as long as I've been alive, and that is really cool. So these are my first 10 favorites of the year, numbers 40 through 31. I look forward to recording the next 3 videos. Let me know your favorite albums in the comment section. Do you like these albums? Do you dislike these albums? What are you listening to right now? Are you going to make a list? Are you going to make a video? Let me know in the comments. It's list season, and that is exciting for us music nerds. So yeah, remember, this is fun. This is my list. You're going to have your own list, your own taste, your own sort of ranking of these albums. But do give them all a listen if you're into death metal. If you're into extreme music, this is some of my favorites of the year, obviously. My number 40 through 31. Thank you for watching, and remember to stay heavy. Talk to you all soon. Bye.